Once upon a time, many years ago, there were diseases. Strange, horrible, harrowing diseases that would rip through the lives of people throughout villages and towns, countrysides, and in cities. These diseases were called rubella, measles, whooping cough, black death, and so many other things. An example would be the paintings that you would often see of people in immense pain, their spines crippling upward, and their muscles tensed farther than anyone should ever go. This is an example of a disease that is often not cured but prevented by the vaccines. These vaccines, although they have been controversial before, actually provides a benefit much greater than simply protecting the person. Doctors throughout time have had the opportunity to save lives with these protective medicines, particularly compared to the time when they didn't know about these. They didn't have the technology to create them. The proof that vaccines save lives can be found throughout history, in the medical books, in journals, and in our own bodies. If you think back to when you were younger, you may remember chickenpox ripping through the classroom, and you wonder to yourself, where did this come from? Well, chances are it came from someone who was unvaccinated. Not vaccinating your children, or children that you're in charge of, puts both them, you, and the general public at risk. Refusing to vaccinate your children based on miseducation, false information, or internet warriors not only leads to a greater danger for them, but for you, even if you yourself are vaccinated as a child. An example of this would be in New York last year, even. There was a resurgence of mumps and measles that was tearing across the country. And in fact, it even was in Michigan at this point. Polio, whooping cough, chickenpox, scarlet fever, all of these can cause death, paralyzation, meningitis, brain bleeding, and in some cases can even affect you later in life after you recover. I know this because a friend of mine actually contracted meningitis as a young child, probably 11 or 12 years old, and to this day still has mind-numbing headaches and pains in their spine and in their head and their body because it affects the entire area. One woman, actually, Amy Parker, was the daughter of a crunchy woman back in the 70s. She had none of her shots. She ate healthy. Her mother believed in natural immunizations. And as a child, she contracted many of the diseases that are discussed. She had measles. She had mumps. She had whooping cough. And although she did go on to recover, she herself knew so many others that also went through this that she chose to vaccinate her children and to educate herself on it. The importance of vaccinating children and teenagers and adults if you are unvaccinated cannot be understated, because not only does it affect you directly, but it affects the strangers you come in contact with in your everyday meetings. It can affect people that you know that have weakened immune systems, like cancer patients, or elderly people, or babies that are too young to receive the vaccines and have no voice for themselves. And as you look out into our new found world, where the communications and the beliefs and the facts on the internet are so widespread, you have to wonder, does this correlate with the popular resurgence of all these diseases that were thought to be wiped out? The effects of not immunizing children cause them not only to be open to deadly diseases, but exposes their classmates, their friends, to fall helpless to the silent killers. Those who are unvaccinated aren't a small portion of our world. They make up 13% of people in America. 1 in 10 people that you know believes that vaccines are deadly and choose not to. They choose not to educate themselves. They choose to look to the internet and their friends and misinformation and untrustworthy sites to find out. 13% of the United States is killing off herd immunity, or the ability for one person to be safe from all these diseases because everybody else has taken those steps to protect themselves. At my school, there's actually a young boy. His name was Bryson. He had an incurable brain cancer, and for a while he attended school until he learned that there was an unvaccinated children in that school that he could possibly catch these serious diseases from. And he had to make that choice to stop going to school to try and keep his life just a little longer rather than continuing about it in a normal way, socializing with his friends and enjoying his life that he had left. Okay, switch the page. The consequences of not vaccinating are, not minimal. They are an obvious health risk. There's a social risk too to them later in life, with people not been inoculated, getting judged quite harshly actually by those who have been protected against these potential carriers. Doctors agree that the risk associated with the vaccines are minimal, especially compared to the harrowing, horrible way that they wreck your body if you don't take those steps of precaution. Although there are slight traces of mercury and old rumors about aborted fetal cells, those are not our current vaccines. Those are the outdated ones. Our current ones, although they still have some of these toxic chemicals, you ingest more of these chemicals in your everyday food and life and your jewelry than you will ever encounter in a vaccine. One doctor has even said that vaccines saves lives and fear endangers them. It's a message that all parents need to hear, all the time. Many people who are anti-vax actually go on to re-educate themselves later in life and often realize that they made mistakes not taking those steps to protect themselves or their children. One such writer wrote about how he became deaf in the womb due to his mother contracting rubella, and he often wishes that maybe his mother had looked deeper than just trusting her friends. And by correcting this behavior of misinformation and not vaccinating their children, people can, protect many groups and themselves well into adulthood. In order to be part of the solution, those who have chosen to previously not vaccinate must go forth and educate others why they changed their mind, and furthermore, take the appropriate steps to protect themselves and their families. These actions can correct the potentially devastating results otherwise. The actions are interlocking, and throughout the problem of not vaccinating and misinformation, if you simply can break up one of these simple cycles, you can have a much better trajectory towards life. If you can implement, doctors particularly, doctors, nurses, and people who are part of the unvaccinating groups, the anti-vaxxers, if you will, if you can break into that cycle of hearing what you want to hear about those vaccinations, you not only stand the ability to raise awareness, but you can help your general social public area. And although some states have taken the mandatory action of vaccinating children, there has been pushback. But along that line, there is also the great increase in the amount of children who were protected, although there was arguments against it at first. Overall, the miseducation and myths surrounding vaccines that are harmful actually cause more harm, not only to the people not being inoculated, but those who are unable to, and those potentially who have been vaccinated at birth, but are being introduced to new strains because it is a constantly evolving cycle. The government should take away every opportunity, or take every opportunity, to prevent against the potentially saddening effects caused by the harmful viruses that were at one point thought to be eradicated. To conclude my speech, I implore those who are not too weak to defend themselves against the pathogens unknowingly carried by people to go about their day, unaware of the potentially devastating effect they can have on their peers, loved ones, and strangers.